My dying wife, Martha's last wish, was this garden. "Michael, you've seen death and war, now grow life," she had said. When Karen laid hands on this garden, she wasn't just attacking vegetables, she was attacking the memory of my 40-year marriage. I had 48 hours. Either I would uproot my tomato seedlings and do what Karen said, or I would teach this woman the biggest lesson of her life. As a Vietnam veteran, it was obvious which choice I would make. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Write in the comments, I'm curious. I'll never forget that moment when the federal prosecutor handed Karen the $2.3 million penalty notice. Under the cold lights of the courtroom, Karen's arrogant smile froze. Her makeup ran, her hands trembled. Even her lawyer was backing away from her. But what was truly surprising were Karen's last words. As the judge read the sentence, Karen looked at me, real fear in her eyes for the first time. "I just wanted a perfect neighborhood, Michael. My mother always complained about messy gardens." "This was just a garden issue," she stammered, her voice cracking. "No, Karen," I said, standing up. "This was a federal crime issue, and you messed with a 30-year federal senior inspector." Judge Margaret Davidson, a federal judge with 20 years of experience, looked at Karen over her glasses. "Mrs. Whitfield, I sentence you to 5 years federal prison, $2.3 million in restitution, and seizure of all your assets for federal grant fraud of $850,000, embezzlement of public funds, tax evasion, and falsifying documents." Karen collapsed to the floor. They had to call an ambulance. But the story actually begins 10 minutes earlier with Karen's final attack on me. "You ruined my entire life," Karen had screamed outside the courthouse. "Martha wasn't your wife. It's an excuse. You're just an old man seeking attention." That's when the Vietnam veteran in me awakened. She had attacked Martha's memory. This was no longer personal. It was a matter of honor. But the story goes back 14 months, to those dark days when I lost my Martha. My name is Michael James Hartwell. I'm 72 years old, a Vietnam War veteran, an agricultural engineer, and I worked as a senior inspector at the Federal Department of Agriculture for 30 years. I solved over 850 agricultural fraud cases, uncovered nearly $50 million in federal grant fraud, but none of them were so intertwined with my personal life. Martha and I met in 1976. I had just returned from Vietnam, a young man struggling with my traumas. She was studying botany at Georgetown University. The first time I saw her, she was watering lavender seedlings in the campus greenhouse. The sunlight made her hair look like gold. "Plants talk," was her first sentence to me. "You just need to know how to listen." We were married for 47 years. We never had children, but we were enough for each other. Everywhere Martha touched turned into a garden of paradise. While I traveled across the country as a federal inspector, she turned our home into a work of art. In November 2022, Martha's stomach started hurting. "Maybe it's age," she said, but I was worried. Thanks to federal health insurance, we took her to Johns Hopkins. I understood the bad news from Dr. Richardson's face before he even spoke. "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer," he said. "Sorry, we discovered it too late, 3 to 6 months." Martha squeezed my hand. "Michael, this is our last spring. Let's create an unforgettable garden." That winter, we spent Martha's last energy-making garden plans. "It will be a victory garden," she would say from her bedside. "Not for those who died in war, but for those who survived. You chose to live, Michael. Now you will grow life." I lost Martha in February 2023. Before she took her last breath, she held my hand. "Don't forget the garden, Michael. Grow life for me. Grow beauty." After the funeral, I didn't leave the house for 3 months. I wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping, just looking at Martha's photos. My traumas from Vietnam came back. After 50 years, I was having nightmares again. Psychologist Dr. Sarah Chen said, "PTSD and grief together are very dangerous. You need to make a new beginning. Fulfill Martha's last wish." In memory of Martha, I bought a house in Willowbrook neighborhood. Quiet, clean, safe place. Ideal for seniors. Affordable enough to live comfortably on my federal retirement pension. The first 6 months, I didn't talk to anyone. Market, pharmacy, home. I only talked to Martha's photo. "How will I do it, Martha? How does a garden grow without you?" In September 2023, I made my decision. I would create Martha's victory garden. I tested the soil quality of the front garden. With my 30 years of experience at the Federal Department of Agriculture, I planned an organic garden. Martha's favorite tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, eggplants. Each seedling would carry her memory. When I planted the first seedlings, neighbors watched curiously. Mr. Thompson, a retired electrical engineer, called from the fence, "What are you growing, Michael?" "My wife's memorial garden," I said. "Martha was a botanist." "Beautiful," said Thompson. "The first vegetable garden in the neighborhood. Fresh tomatoes will be nice." At that time, I hadn't met Karen Whitfield yet. If I had, maybe I would never have started the garden. The first day I encountered Karen was Saturday morning, October 15th, 2023. I was installing support stakes for my tomato seedlings. I was using the technique Martha taught me. "When a plant is supported as it grows, it becomes stronger," she used to say. "Like people." A Mercedes G-Class SUV parked in my driveway. The woman who got out looked like a supermodel, 5 feet 7 inches tall, platinum blonde hair, perfect makeup, 4-inch heels, white blazer jacket, Hermes bag on her. Every detail was expensive and flashy. As she walked on the grass, her heels sank into the lawn. "You must be Mr. Hartwell," she said with that fake professional smile. "Karen Whitfield, your neighborhood president and from Homebest Real Estate. We need to talk about this farming situation." "Farming?" I said, without taking my hands out of my dirty gloves. "This is Martha's memorial garden. My wife was a botanist." "I don't know what memorial garden means, but," she cut me off, "we have very strict aesthetic rules in this neighborhood. According to Residential Covenants Section 3.2, vegetables cannot be grown in front yards. Didn't you read the HOA contract?" "I read it," I said. "I don't see a garden ban." "Decorative landscaping only," said Karen, opening the contract on her cell phone. "Only ornamental plants, not agricultural products." That day she got by with just a warning, but as she left, she turned and took photos. I knew then that this woman was going to be a problem. The next week, strange behaviors started coming from neighbors. Mrs. Garcia used to say, "Good morning." Now she turned her head. Mr. Johnson used to stop and chat while jogging. Now he ran past. It didn't take long to learn why. Karen had started a systematic campaign. My neighbor Thompson came to my door one evening. "Michael, I want to tell you something." "Sure, Mr. Thompson." "Karen Whitfield came to our house yesterday. She talked about your garden. She said, security risk. She said, lowers property values. She said, pesticide poisoning. We told her we believed you, but... Other neighbors were convinced. Karen speaks very persuasively. That night, I realized Karen wasn't just enforcing HOA rules. She had declared psychological warfare. She was trying to isolate me socially. The most important thing I learned in Vietnam: know your enemy, understand their tactics, find their weakness. In those dark days, when fighting Viet Cong guerrillas, the secret to survival wasn't just firepower, it was intelligence gathering. You can't win without understanding your enemy. I began to systematically research Karen. As a federal inspector for 30 years, analyzing people, finding patterns, and detecting criminal behavior was routine work for me. Fraudsters always showed the same characteristics: excess lifestyle, income inconsistencies, defensive behavior patterns. First, I examined her digital footprint. On her LinkedIn profile, she described herself as community development expert, real estate professional, sustainable living advocate, HOA presidency since 2019, senior agent position at Homebest Real Estate, professional headshot showing trustworthy, competent businesswoman image. Her Instagram account was more revealing. 2020 vacation on Amalfi Coasts, 2021 skiing in Swiss Alps, 2022 Maldives Resort, 2023 Dubai luxury shopping. Every post showed expensive experiences, designer clothes, luxury accommodation. Karen's real estate sales figures were surprising. In 2020, she sold 8 houses, earned about $65,000 commission. 2021, 6 sales, $48,000. 2022, only 4 houses, $32,000 commission. 2023, 3 sales, $22,000 commission. Numbers didn't add up. Declining real estate income, but increasing luxury lifestyle. Classic red flag for financial fraud. Property records showed Karen purchased her $1.2 million house in 2020, all cash payment. But that year, commission income was only $65,000. How had she paid $1.2 million cash? Vehicle registration: 2021 Mercedes G-Class SUV, $95,000. 2022 BMW X7, $78,000. 2 luxury vehicles, but declining income. My federal training told me major income source missing. Karen was money laundering or had unreported income or fraud. I started listening to neighborhood gossip networks. Mr. Thompson was a precious information source. Karen always spending money, he said one evening, talking over the fence. New furniture every month, expensive landscaping, pool renovation. Mrs. Garcia observed, Karen never works weekend mornings, but luxury car always in driveway. Real estate agents normally work weekends. A pattern was emerging. Karen was doing minimal real estate work, but maintaining an extravagant lifestyle. Primary income source was coming from elsewhere. Another thing I learned in Vietnam, patient reconnaissance always pays off. Don't rush, observe all angles, then strike. But Karen didn't show patience. She was preparing to make her next big mistake. The first major crisis came 3 weeks later. Karen called an emergency neighborhood meeting. Under the cold lights of Willowbrook Community Center, 25 people sat in plastic chairs arranged in a U-shape. Karen had prepared a PowerPoint presentation with a projector. Mr. Hartwell's illegal farming activity, she read in a professional tone, is putting our neighborhood at serious risk. Photos of my garden, titled Unsightly Appearance. Property value decline, fake statistics, health hazards, unknown pesticides, soil contamination, pest attraction, rodents, insects, bacterial growth. Mr. Hartwell, said Karen, turning to me, what do you say to these allegations? I stood up. Mrs. Whitfield, I did federal agricultural inspection for 30 years. I know organic gardening better than you. I don't use pesticides. The soil is clean. There's no pest problem. Federal inspection? Said Karen, frowning. I thought you were retired. I am retired, but my knowledge is still valid. Karen smiled. Theoretical knowledge and practical application are different. You're not doing inspection here. Neighborhood rules are being enforced. She held a vote. Who supports removing Mr. Hartwell's garden? 18 hands went up. 7 people remained undecided. I was alone. It has been decided unanimously, said Karen, writing in the minutes. Mr. Hartwell is given 30 days. Otherwise, penalty procedures will be initiated. After the meeting, Karen came to me. Michael, it's nothing personal. Neighborhood rules apply to all of us. You understand? Karen, I said quietly, this is Martha's memorial garden. I planted it for my wife of 47 years. I'm sorry for your loss, she said, but there was no sincerity in her voice. But we can't break rules for emotional reasons. You have 30 days. That night I sat in front of Martha's photo. What should I do, Martha? This woman is trying to taint your memory too. The answer seemed to come, do the right thing, Michael. Don't forget who you are. 30 days later, when I didn't remove my garden, Karen started issuing fines. The second major crisis was more systematic and calculated. Karen had decided to break me down step by step. Classic intimidation tactics. As a federal inspector, I had seen this approach in organized crime investigations. Isolate the target, apply financial pressure, destroy their social support system, then force total submission. The first fine was $250. Official HOA. Letterhead, legal language, final warning terminology. Karen had made a calculated start, not too aggressive to trigger immediate resistance. But I understood her game. The second week, the fine went up to $500. Escalation pattern established. Continued non-compliance language was added. Psychological pressure was being increased systematically. Third week, $750. Community safety concerns. Introduction. Narrative building. Michael, not just rule breaker, but potential threat to neighborhood. Fourth week, the fine reached $1,000. Legal action pending threat introduced. Stakes raised significantly. Fifth week, $1,500. Property line consideration mentioned. Direct threat to home ownership came. Sixth week, $2,000. Foreclosure proceedings possible language. Ultimate threat finally delivered. Each fine delivery was a theatrical performance. Karen would personally come to my door, wearing expensive suit, holding clipboard, serious expression. Michael, this gives me no pleasure, she would say in a fake sympathy voice. But rules are rules. Community standards must be maintained. Simultaneously, Karen intensified her neighborhood propaganda campaign. Door-to-door visits every weekend. Target elderly residents, families with children, anyone potentially sympathetic to safety concerns. Mrs. Chen, Mr. Kim's wife, Karen told us your garden attracts rats. My children play outside. Mr. Foster, 3 houses down. Karen says property values dropping because of agricultural activities. Mrs. Patterson, elderly widow. Karen concerned about chemical runoff into groundwater. Karen masterfully crafted narrative. Michael, selfish old man, endangering community for personal obsession. But Karen made a critical error. She underestimated a Vietnam veteran's tolerance for psychological warfare. In Vietnam, Viet Cong used similar tactics. Isolate American units, cut supply lines, psychological pressure through attrition. But we learned counter strategies. Stay calm, gather intelligence, wait for enemy to overextend, then counterattack it with overwhelming force. Karen was overextending. Her aggressive timeline was creating a documentation trail. Her propaganda was creating witnesses to her methods. Her financial pressure tactics were generating evidence. Meanwhile, I continued my systematic documentation process. Every fine notice photographed, copied, filed. Every neighbor conversation recorded, legal in our state, with single-party consent. Every Karen interaction carefully documented. I remembered the motto from federal prosecutor training. Build case like constructing building. Strong foundation, solid framework, overwhelming evidence. While Karen was trying to make me surrender with financial pressure, I was documenting her federal crime. The next morning, another shock awaited me. Mr. Johnson was standing at my door, holding official-looking documents. Michael, I'm sorry, but I need to deliver these documents to you. What documents, Mr. Johnson? From the health department. Soil contamination has been detected in your garden. Immediate cessation order. I examined the documents. They were obviously fake, but Mr. Johnson thought they were real. Who ordered this test, Mr. Johnson? Karen Whitfield. She applied citing community safety concern. 30 minutes later, Mr. Thompson came. Michael, Karen called the fire department. There's apparently a fire risk in your garden. Fire department coming for inspection. 1 hour later, Mrs. Garcia. Michael, Karen called animal control. There's suspicion of illegal livestock. Karen had launched a systematic attack. Fake complaints, fake documents, fake emergencies. But every false alarm was working in my favor because officials would come and inspect, find no problems, and write reports. No violations found. Karen was shooting herself in the foot. Editor Sandra Williams of Willowbrook Times called. Karen had good relations with Sandra because of her real estate business. When I saw the news in the paper Monday morning, my heart rate increased. Illegal farming threatens neighborhood safety. A homeowner in Willowbrook Estates is doing illegal farming in his front yard, ignoring HOA rules. According to Neighborhood President Karen Whitfield, this activity creates health risks and lowers property values. We're experiencing pesticide contamination and pest problems, says Whitfield. This citizen refuses to follow rules. The article portrayed Martha's Memorial Garden as an illegal farming operation. My photo was published as a rule-breaking resident. That evening, I sat in front of Martha's photo, my hands trembling. A 72-year-old man was being shown as a criminal in the newspaper. Martha's Memorial Garden was being called an illegal operation. Martha, I said to the photograph, voice choking, this woman destroyed your memory in the media too. She's showing your beautiful garden as a community threat. Silence. Only sound. Grandfather clock ticking, reminiscent of Martha's favorite timepiece. She always said, time heals everything, Michael, but sometimes time needs help. That night, the decision moment came. In Vietnam, there were critical moments, either retreat or fight with full commitment. There was no middle ground. Survival depended on decisiveness. Karen had weaponized the media. This was a declaration of war. I opened Martha's jewelry box. 47 years marriage mementos, wedding ring, anniversary earrings, grandmother's necklace. But the most precious item, small metal container Martha carried during cancer treatment. Inside, soil sample from our first garden, 1978. Our beginning, Martha had written on a tiny label, where love grows. I smelled that soil. Martha's essence was still there. Courage surged through my veins. Okay, Martha, I said aloud. Now it's time to teach her the truth. As you always said, fight for what's right. Next morning research session was intensive. Vietnam training activated. When enemy escalates, you escalate harder. But smart escalation, strategic escalation. My Federal Archives online access was still active. Retired senior inspectors had special privileges. Database queries, grant records, compliance histories. Willowbrook search results were shocking. Karen hadn't just received the $850,000 Sustainable Gardens grant. She had applied for multiple grants over the years. In 2018, She received $125,000 under Community Safety Enhancement. In 2019, the $850,000 we knew about for sustainable community gardens. In 2020, another $275,000 for Neighborhood Beautification Initiative. In 2021, an additional $180,000 for Environmental Education Program. Total, $1,430,000 in federal money. She had stolen over $1.5 million. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the documentation. Karen was a systematic grant fraud machine, a professional criminal operation. Each application was masterfully crafted. Different programs, different agencies, but same pattern. Promise community improvements, collect money, minimal implementation. I examined the 2018 safety enhancement. She had promised security cameras, lighting, emergency systems. Implementation, Karen's own home security upgrade. I researched the 2020 beautification grant. She had promised community landscaping, entrance improvements. Implementation, Karen's personal property landscaping. I checked the 2021 environmental education. She had promised workshops, educational materials, community outreach. Implementation, zero. Nothing was done. The pattern was crystal clear. Karen wasn't an opportunistic criminal. She was a professional grant fraudster, operating a systematic scheme. But the biggest shock, approval signatures. Multiple grants approved by different federal inspectors, safety enhancement. Inspector David Rodriguez, FEMA, Gardens. Program, Inspector Michael Hartwell, me, USDA. Beautification, Inspector Sarah Chen, EPA. Environmental Education, Inspector Robert Kim, Department of Education. Karen had targeted different agencies, different inspectors, preventing detection through federal coordination. Sophisticated operation. Karen had researched which inspectors handled which programs, timing applications to avoid overlap detection. But critical error, she attacked the wrong inspector, me. I immediately called Robert Chen. Robert, emergency situation, major multi-agency grant fraud scheme discovered. Michael, how major? $1.4 million, 4 agencies, 4 years operation, Willowbrook Estates. Jesus Christ, single perpetrator? Karen Whitfield. She just made newspaper headlines calling me a criminal for gardening. Irony level, maximum. What's next step? Multi-agency task force, FBI coordination. This is bigger than a single USDA case. Michael, you sure about evidence quality? Robert, 30 years federal investigation experience. This is the strongest case I've ever compiled. Documentation is overwhelming. All right, I'll call other agencies. This becomes a federal priority investigation. Karen had published her newspaper article the same day a multi-agency federal investigation was launched. Perfect timing, media attention exactly when federal authorities were starting a full investigation. Karma sometimes works precisely. The program requirements were clear. Neighborhood residents would produce their own food. Organic farming practices would be taught. Environmentally friendly lifestyle would be encouraged. Sustainable gardening training would be provided. Neighborhood common garden areas would be established. And guess who applied for this grant? Karen Whitfield, under the title Neighborhood President and Sustainable Living Coordinator. When I opened the grant application file, I was breathless. A plan written with Karen's own signature. An organic gardening program will be initiated in Willowbrook Estates neighborhood. Homeowners will be encouraged to establish their own vegetable gardens. Sustainable living training will be organized. Environmentally friendly farming practices will be taught. And the most shocking, grant approval signature, Michael J. Hartwell, Senior Inspector, USDA. I had approved this grant. My heart seemed to stop. 2019, the period just before my retirement. Hundreds of files passed through my hands. I had routinely approved this file too. Karen had received a grant from me, promised to do gardening in the neighborhood, then banned the same gardening. This wasn't just moral contradiction, it was federal fraud. I called my former colleague, Robert Chen. He worked in the Federal Grant Oversight Division. Robert, do you remember the Willowbrook Estates grant? Sure, Michael. The sustainable gardening program you approved in 2019, right? What happened? Is the program working? I don't know. It's been 4 years. Need a progress report. Why do you ask? There's a suspicious situation, Robert. This grant should be reviewed again. Serious, Michael? Federal fraud suspicion, Robert. There was silence. Robert had worked with me for 20 years. He knew I wasn't joking when I said fraud suspicion. What do you want, Michael? Official audit. Emergency basis. You're retired, Michael. No audit authority. There's retired senior inspector privilege, Robert. CFR Title 7, Section 3015.142. In case of suspected federal grant fraud, retired senior inspector can write special report. Very few people knew this rule, but I worked in the federal system for 30 years. I knew all my authorities. Okay, Michael, I'm starting a special audit, but be careful. This is serious business. The federal audit process began quietly. Karen had no idea what storm was brewing. While I was collecting documents, Karen was preparing her final blow to me. The fourth major crisis was Karen's ultimate power play. The final ultimatum delivery was a theatrical masterpiece. Karen didn't just give an ultimatum, she decided to culminate psychological warfare. Saturday morning, a cold November day. Weather overcast, symbolically appropriate for what was coming. Karen didn't come alone. She organized a full HOA delegation. HOA board members Brad Stevens and Michelle Park, plus 2 additional witnesses, Mrs. Diana Foster, Karen Alley, and Mr. Timothy Hayes, neighborhood attorney. 5-person intimidation squad at my door. Brad Stevens had a banker personality, expensive suit, briefcase, stern businesslike demeanor. Mr. Hartwell, this is an official HOA board proceeding. Everything is being recorded for legal purposes. Michelle Park's lawyer training was evident. Every word carefully chosen, legal implications considered. Sir, we're representing community interests. Personal feelings aside, binding agreements must be honored. Mrs. Foster played the supportive witness role. Michael, nobody wants problems. Just comply, everything returns to normal. Mr. Hayes provided legal authority presence. Gentlemen, I'm here as an objective legal observer. Procedures must be followed correctly. Karen's orchestration was masterful, not just ultimatum delivery, intimidation through numbers, authority display, legal sophistication and demonstration. Michael, Karen began, clipboard thick with documents. This is our final conversation regarding ongoing violation. $5,000 final penalty assessment, plus accumulated violations totaling $8,750. Total due, $13,750. Stevens opened his briefcase. Mr. Hartwell, HOA Board unanimous decision. 48-hour compliance deadline. Garden removal mandatory. Park presented legal documentation. Sir, failure to comply triggers automatic lien placement, followed by foreclosure proceedings. This is a legal warning. Hayes nodded approval. Procedures correctly followed. Community obligations clear. Foster made emotional appeal. Michael, please. Martha wouldn't want community problems. She was a lovely woman. Coordinated attack. Financial pressure, $13,750. Legal threats, foreclosure. Time pressure, 48 hours. Emotional manipulation, Martha reference. Plus overwhelming numbers, 5 versus 1. But Karen made a critical tactical error. She brought a legal observer. Mr. Hayes, I said calmly, legal question. Do HOA covenants mention federal compliance requirements? Hayes consulted documents. Federal compliance? Not specifically. What about federal grant obligations affecting community covenants? Hayes looked confused. Federal grants? This is a private community matter. Karen interrupted. Michael, no federal issues here. Simple HOA compliance. Interesting, I continued. Federal grants don't affect community obligations. Stevens was impatient. Mr. Hartwell, this is a distraction. Garden compliance is the only issue. So the federal Sustainable Community Gardens grant doesn't impact garden policies? Silence. Park was sharp. What federal grant? Karen's face was changing color. No federal grants are relevant here. The $850,000 federal grant for Sustainable Community Gardens isn't relevant to garden policy. Complete silence, 5 faces staring. Hayes shuffled documents. I wasn't informed about federal grants. Karen was desperate. Michael is creating confusion. No federal involvement here. Should the HOA board attorney know about federal grants affecting community policy? Hayes to Karen. You didn't mention federal grants. Stevens to Karen. What federal grants? Park to Karen. Were we supposed to know about this? Foster uncomfortable. Karen, you didn't tell us. Karen was surrounded by her own delegation, all questioning her. It's complicated, Karen stammered. 48 hours ultimatum, I said calmly. But federal investigation takes longer. Should community attorney advise on federal compliance during federal investigation? Hayes very uncomfortable. If federal investigation is ongoing, I cannot recommend HOA action potentially conflicting with federal authority. Stevens. Karen, is there a federal investigation? Park. Are we interfering with federal investigation? Foster. What federal investigation? Karen in complete panic. No! No federal investigation. Michael is making up stories. Strange, I said. Agent Johnson called yesterday. Federal Agricultural Department Grant Investigation Division. Said they'd visit Monday. Complete silence. 5 stunned faces. Hayes backing away. I cannot represent HOA in matter involving federal investigation. Legal ethics violation. Stevens. Karen, explain federal grants immediately. Park. This meeting is suspended until federal clarification. Foster. I don't want federal problems. Karen's intimidation squad dissolved, her own team abandoning her. Wait, Karen desperate. No federal problems. Michael is lying. Too late. Her delegation was leaving. 48 hours, Karen called out weakly as others departed. Yes, Karen, I replied. 48 hours until federal agents arrive. Perfect timing. Karen gave a 48-hour ultimatum. The same weekend federal investigation accelerated. Monday morning would be very interesting. That weekend I got a phone call from Robert. Michael, Willowbrook audit preliminary results are out. You'll be shocked. Tell me, Robert. $600,000 of the $850,000 grant is missing. No documentation at all. What do you mean missing? Karen Whitfield transferred the grant to her own company, Whitfield Property Solutions, LLC, under fake consulting fees. The remaining $250,000 used for Karen's own home landscaping and pool installation payments. What about the sustainable gardening program? Never done, Michael. Zero implementation. No training, no gardens, no program. On the contrary, she imposed a garden ban. My hands were trembling. This is full-scale federal fraud, Robert. Yes, Michael. Department of Justice must be notified. FBI involvement will be needed. How big a penalty are we talking about? Federal fraud, minimum 5 years prison. Financial damages 3 times multiplier. $2.55 million restitution on $850,000. Plus penalties and interest. Total? Probably in the $4 to $5 million range. Karen had given a 48-hour ultimatum. She didn't know federal agents would be at her door within 48 hours. Monday morning. Day of reckoning came. Early morning, Karen's Mercedes entered my driveway. She was early, eager to document my non-compliance. She positioned strategically for photos, for legal documentation, for witness testimony. Karen knocked on the door aggressively. Michael, inspection time. Garden should have been removed. I opened the door calmly. Good morning, Karen. Don't good morning me. Where's the garden removal? You had 48 hours. Garden is still here, Karen, as you can see. Karen started taking photos frantically. Perfect. Legal documentation completed. I'm immediately calling Michelle Park. Karen called HOA lawyer Michelle Park. Michelle, total non-compliance. Start foreclosure proceedings immediately. A few minutes later, black SUVs appeared at the end of the street. Federal agents. Karen initially didn't notice, focused on photographing garden, documenting evidence, calling additional witnesses. 7:32 a.m., Agent Sarah Johnson, Agent Ricardo Martinez approached. Karen noticed federal vehicles, confusion evident. Police? Did someone call police? I called. HOA lawyer, not police. Agent Johnson, professional, authoritative. Ma'am, we're federal agents, not local police. Are you Karen Whitfield? Karen's confidence evaporating. Federal agents? Why are federal agents here? Ma'am, Federal Agricultural Department Grant Investigation Division. We need to speak with you regarding federal grant irregularities. Karen's face drained color completely, phone dropping from shaking hands. Grant irregularities? I don't understand. Agent Martinez had documentation ready. Ma'am, Willowbrook Estates Sustainable Community Gardens Program, 2019. $850,000 federal grant. You signed as primary applicant. Yes, but that was a legitimate grant. Ma'am, grant requires implementation of community gardens. Our investigation shows zero implementation, plus fund diversion to personal accounts. Karen desperate. There must be a mistake. I implemented gardens. Agent Johnson gestured toward my garden. Ma'am, you're currently attempting to remove the only garden in the community. How does this constitute implementation? Perfect irony. Federal agents witnessing Karen trying to destroy gardens she was federally funded to create. Karen in panic mode. That garden is illegal. HOA rules prohibit gardens. Agent Martinez reviewing documentation. Ma'am, your grant application specifically promises to encourage resident gardens. You're violating your own federal commitment. Neighbors beginning to emerge. Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Garcia, Mr. Kim, others witnessing unprecedented scene. HOA President confronted by federal agents. Officers, agents, this is a misunderstanding. Karen pleading. I can explain everything. Agent Johnson stern. Ma'am, this is not a misunderstanding. This is a criminal investigation. We need you to come with us for questioning. Karen in wild panic. Criminal? I'm not a criminal. He's the criminal, pointing at me. He's doing illegal farming. Arrest him. Agent Martinez looked at me. Sir, identification please. I removed my wallet, presented federal ID, Federal Agricultural Department, Senior Inspector, Retirement ID. Michael James Hartwell, 30-year service record, security clearance, Alpha 7. Agent Johnson's demeanor changed immediately. Senior Inspector Hartwell, sir. Agent Martinez respectful. Sir, you initiated this investigation. Correct, agents. Federal grant fraud, estimated $1.4 million across multiple agencies. Karen's stunned realization. You're a federal inspector? 30 years, Karen. You took federal money from me to create gardens, then tried to destroy my garden. Karen collapsed, legs giving out, requiring agent support. Agent Johnson. Karen Whitfield, you're under arrest for federal grant fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and false documentation. Miranda rights recited as neighbors watched in shock. Karen hysterical. This is impossible! He's just an old man. I'm a community leader. This is a mistake. Agent Martinez. Ma'am, $1.4 million documentation doesn't make mistakes. As the federal vehicle departed with Karen, neighbor reactions were immediate. Mr. Thompson. Michael, you're a federal inspector? We never knew. Mrs. Garcia. Karen was arrested? Why? Mr. Kim. Federal grant fraud? Was Karen a criminal? Community transformation was instant. Karen's authority completely destroyed, her reputation shattered, her criminal nature exposed. Phone calls flooded in. Brad Stevens, HOA board. Michael, resigning from board immediately, didn't know about federal issues. Michelle Park, HOA lawyer. Mr. Hartwell, withdrawing representation, cannot represent criminal matters. Mrs. Foster. Michael, so sorry, Karen deceived everyone. Local media arrived within hours. Willowbrook, HOA, president arrested for federal fraud. Federal investigation expanding. Agent Johnson briefed me. Sir, Karen is part of a larger network. Grant fraud schemes across multiple states. Your case is a breakthrough for nationwide operation. Justice momentum building exponentially. For what services, ma'am? Said Agent Johnson. Neighborhood, garden, program development, ... Karen stammered. Ma'am, no garden program has been implemented. On the contrary, you imposed a garden ban. Senior Inspector Hartwell's report has all the details. Karen looked at me, panic in her eyes. You're a federal inspector? 30 years, Karen. And you took a grant from me for sustainable gardening. Now you're banning the same gardening. I didn't know. You didn't say your identity. You didn't ask Karen. You just focused on destroying Martha's memorial garden. Agent Martinez took out handcuffs. Karen Whitfield, you're under federal charges. Miranda rights. Stop! Karen screamed. This is a mistake! I'm innocent! That man is doing illegal farming. Agent Johnson's voice showed impatience. Ma'am, Senior Inspector Hartwell is a federal authority. Are you accusing a federal inspector of illegal farming? At that moment, neighbors watching on the street were shocked. Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Garcia, Mr. Kim, all looking from their windows. The HOA president was being arrested by federal agents. As Karen was handcuffed, she was screaming like crazy. This isn't fair. He's just an old man. I'm the neighborhood president. I follow the rules. Ma'am, said Agent Johnson, you committed a federal crime. Senior Inspector Hartwell is doing legal farming activity. Your crime, his legal activity. As the federal vehicle took Karen away, Agent Johnson came to me. Sir, thank you for the cooperation. The grant fraud ring was exposed this way. Grant fraud ring? Yes, sir. Karen Whitfield is just the beginning. Investigation shows there's an organized operation, multiple neighborhoods, multiple fake grants. Your case was the breakthrough. How big an operation? Preliminary estimates, 15 to 20 neighborhoods, $12 to $15 million stolen federal funds. Karen is a major player, but not the mastermind. So, Karen was just a small fish, part of a bigger gang? Who's the mastermind, Agent Johnson? Ongoing investigation, sir, but thanks to your documentation, we made big progress. That evening, local news channels reported the federal arrest. Willowbrook HOA President arrested for federal fraud. Karen Whitfield, a real estate agent who served as Willowbrook Estates HOA President for 4 years, was arrested by the FBI for $850,000 federal grant fraud. Federal inspectors' investigation revealed the grant was stolen for personal use. The phone wouldn't stop ringing, neighbors calling, apologizing. Michael, we're so sorry. We believed Karen. You were right. Michael, your garden is so beautiful. We support you now. Michael, Karen fooled us too. If we had known you were a federal inspector... Mr. Thompson came to my door. Michael, deep apology. We made a big mistake. Karen was a very convincing liar. Mrs. Garcia crying, Michael, I'm so sorry. Karen said you were a dangerous man, but you were a hero. But the story wasn't over yet. Karen's arrest was just the beginning. Fifth major crisis, Karen's legal team counterattack. 3 days later, Wednesday morning, 2 lawyers in expensive suits came to my door. Mr. Hartwell, I'm attorney David Walsh, representing Karen Whitfield, my partner attorney Linda Chen. What do you want? Our client is under fabricated charges. You made false accusations with revenge motivation. Attorney Chen, coldly, you misled federal authorities. Grant fraud allegations are unsubstantiated. You abused the federal system for personal vendetta over a garden dispute. Have you seen the evidence? I said. Evidence is circumstantial, said Walsh. Karen provided legitimate consulting services. Payment was legal compensation. What consulting services? Grant application preparation, community planning, administrative coordination. $850,000 worth of consulting? High-level consulting is expensive, sir. Karen is an expert. So, where's the gardening program? Program was postponed due to COVID. Implementation was delayed. These lawyers were trying to save Karen. Despite federal evidence, they were looking for legal loopholes. Mr. Hartwell, said Chen, your personal agenda compromised the federal investigation. You're not an objective witness. There's conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Yes. You originally approved the grant. Now you're claiming fraud. Either you made an original mistake, or you're making false accusations now to cover up. This was a clever legal tactic. They were putting me in a dilemma. Either I had made an erroneous grant approval initially, or I was lying now. Additionally, said Walsh, personal grudge is clear. Karen enforced reasonable HOA rules. You abuse federal power for retaliation. That night, I called Robert. Robert, Karen's lawyers are making a serious counterattack. What are they claiming? Conflict of interest. I originally approved the grant. Now I'm claiming fraud. Michael, don't worry. Evidence is overwhelming. We traced $600,000 in bank records, direct transfers to Karen's personal accounts, consulting invoices all fabricated. Are you sure? Michael, 20 years partnership. I know you. You're a by-the-book man. Never make mistakes in grant approval. Karen is a professional criminal. Next week, I got a phone call from the federal prosecutor. Mr. Hartwell, Assistant U.S. Attorney Maria Rodriguez. I'm handling the Karen Whitfield case. Yes? We prepared a grand jury indictment. Federal charges, grant fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, tax evasion, false documentation. You'll be a key witness. How strong is the case? Overwhelmingly strong, sir. Bank records, email trails, fabricated documents, everything documented. Karen's lawyers are making desperate defense, but it's futile. When's the trial? 6 to 8 weeks, but likely plea bargain before trial. Evidence is too clear. Sixth major crisis. Karen's desperation moves. After Karen was released from jail on bail, she started making desperate moves. First move, character assassination. Karen started a social media campaign. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Corrupt federal inspector ruins innocent woman's life. Michael Hartwell abuse of power. He approved grant 2019, now false accusations, personal vendetta for gardening dispute. Federal system broken. Elderly man seeks revenge through FBI. Justice system corrupted. But it backfired. Public comments didn't support Karen. Lady, you stole $850,000 federal dollars. Shame on you. Michael is a hero. You're a criminal. Go to jail. HOA tyrants deserve prison. Support Michael. Second move, media manipulation. Karen gave a local TV interview. She told a sob story on Channel 7 News. I just enforced neighborhood rules. Michael Hartwell is a vindictive man. He's abusing federal power for personal revenge. I'm an innocent victim. Interviewer. But where's the $850,000 grant, Mrs. Whitfield? That money was for legitimate business expenses, consulting, planning, coordination. Everything was legal. But the gardening program wasn't implemented. COVID pandemic caused delays. I was planning to implement. 4 years have passed. Still delayed? Karen became uncomfortable. I can't give details for legal reasons. Third move, neighborhood pressure. Karen mobilized her remaining supporters, Michelle Park, HOA lawyer, and Brad Stevens, HOA board member, did a door-to-door campaign. Michael Hartwell is creating a dangerous precedent. He's abusing federal authority for personal disputes. He could do the same to you tomorrow. But neighbors no longer supported Karen. Mr. Thompson. Karen is a criminal. Michael is a hero. End of discussion. Mrs. Garcia. Karen lied to us for years. She stole money. I support Michael. The most dramatic moment came during trial week. Karen came to my door personally, crying, desperate, makeup smeared. Michael, please, forgive me. I made a mistake. I can't afford to go to prison. I've already lost everything. Karen, you committed a federal crime. You tried to taint Martha's memory. I apologize for Martha. I was wrong. Please drop the federal charges. Karen, this isn't in my hands anymore. The federal prosecutor decides. You have influence. You're an important man in the federal system. Please help me. You terrorized me for 8 months. You tried to destroy Martha's memorial garden. You stole federal money. Now you must accept the consequences. Karen fell to her knees. Please, Michael. I'll do anything. I'll return the money. Karen, do you have $850,000? I'll sell the house, sell the car, everything. Karen, it's too late. You committed a federal crime. Karen standing up, anger returning. You're a ruthless man. You destroyed my entire life over a garden dispute. Karen, you destroyed your own life by committing a federal crime. I just exposed the truth. Trial day, January 15th, 2024. Federal Courthouse, Judge Margaret Davidson presiding. 25 years. Federal judge experience. Prosecution team, Assistant U.S., Attorney Maria Rodriguez, Attorney James Park. Defense team, Attorney David Walsh, Attorney Linda Chen, Attorney Robert Kim. Jury, 12 citizens, 6 men, 6 women, various backgrounds. Gallery, packed. Media, neighbors, federal officials, Karen's family. Opening statements. Prosecutor Rodriguez. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a case about betrayal of public trust. Defendant Karen Whitfield received $850,000 of taxpayer money to create community gardens. Instead, she stole it. She used it for personal luxury. She then tried to destroy the very gardens she was paid to create. Defense Attorney Walsh. This is a case about an innocent woman caught in bureaucratic confusion. Karen Whitfield provided legitimate consulting services. Any irregularities were administrative errors, not criminal intent. Evidence presentation took 3 days. Day 1, financial records. Bank transfers showing $600,000 going to Karen's personal accounts. $250,000 used for her personal home improvements. Day 2, grant documentation. Original proposal promising community gardens. 0 implementation over 4 years. Day 3, my testimony. State your name and occupation. Michael James Hartwell, retired senior inspector, U.S. Department of Agriculture. Did you approve the grant to Willowbrook Estates? Yes, based on Karen Whitfield's proposal for sustainable community gardens. Was the grant implemented as proposed? Number. Not only was it not implemented, Ms. Whitfield actively prohibited the very gardens she was funded to create. How did you discover the fraud? When Ms. Whitfield tried to fine me $5,000 for growing the gardens she was paid to encourage. Prosecutor Rodriguez, the irony is complete. The defendant stole money to create gardens, then fined the witness for creating gardens. Defense cross-examination. Attorney Walsh. Mr. Hartwell, you had personal animosity toward Ms. Whitfield, correct? I had no opinion of Ms. Whitfield until she targeted my wife's memorial garden. But you were angry about her enforcement of HOA rules? I was confused why someone paid to encourage gardens was prohibiting gardens. Did you investigate her finances out of revenge? I investigated potential federal fraud as a concerned citizen and retired federal official. Isn't it convenient that you discovered fraud only after she crossed you? Attorney Walsh, fraud was occurring for 4 years. I discovered it when circumstances led me to examine the records. Truth doesn't depend on timing. Karen's testimony was a disaster. Prosecutor Rodriguez, where is the $850,000, Ms. Whitfield? I used it for legitimate business purposes. What business purposes? Consulting, planning, coordination. With whom did you consult? Various experts and consultants. Name one. I can't remember specific names. You can't remember who you paid $600,000 to? It was administrative, consulting. Ms. Whitfield, bank records show the money went to your personal accounts. How do you explain that? I was reimbursing myself for expenses. What expenses? Travel, research, planning. Ms. Whitfield, did you travel to Europe 6 times using grant money? That was research for best practices. Did best practices research require a Mediterranean cruise? Karen broke down crying. I made mistakes, but I didn't mean to commit crimes. Judge Davidson. Ms. Whitfield, please answer the question. I used some money personally, but I was going to pay it back. When? When I could, I don't know. Closing arguments. Prosecutor Rodriguez. Karen Whitfield stole $850,000 of your tax money. She used it for personal luxury, while prohibiting the very gardens you funded. This is not a mistake. This is calculated theft. Defense Attorney Walsh. Karen Whitfield made administrative errors in a complex federal program. She intended to implement the program eventually. This is not criminal fraud, it's bureaucratic confusion. Jury deliberation, 2 hours. Verdict, guilty on all counts. Sentencing, 3 weeks later. Judge Davidson. Ms. Whitfield, you betrayed the public trust. You stole taxpayer money intended to benefit your community. You then tried to destroy the very activities you were paid to support. This represents a profound violation of your duty as a community leader. I sentence you to 5 years federal prison, $2.3 million restitution, forfeiture of all assets obtained through fraud, and permanent ban from federal grant programs. Karen collapsed. Paramedics had to be called. As they carried her out on a stretcher, she looked at me one last time. No words, just defeat. 6 months later. Community transformation. My garden became the center of a real community garden program. The Federal Department of Agriculture reallocated the remaining grant money to be properly used. 20 families joined the gardening program. Kids learning sustainable agriculture, seniors sharing farming knowledge, Martha's memory living through community. Mr. Thompson. Michael, this is what Karen should have created 4 years ago. Mrs. Garcia. Your garden saved our neighborhood. Karen was destroying our community. New HOA leadership was elected. Brad Stevens resigned in shame. Michelle Park lost her law license for federal fraud assistance. New HOA President, Mr. Kim, retired engineer. First action, Community Garden Protection Resolution. Gardens are the heart of a healthy neighborhood. Never again will gardens be prohibited. Federal authorities continued investigation. Karen's fraud ring was exposed. 15 HOA leaders across 3 states arrested. Total stolen, $18.5 million. Agent Johnson visited for follow-up. Sir, your case broke open a nationwide HOA grant fraud scheme. Dozens of communities are recovering stolen funds. Glad to help, Agent Johnson. Sir, the Department of Agriculture wants to offer you a consultant position. Help investigate rural grant fraud. At my age, sir, your expertise is invaluable. Fraud fighters are needed. I declined. My fighting days were over. Martha's garden was enough victory. 1 year later, anniversary reflection. Sitting in Martha's garden, watching grandchildren from the neighborhood play between tomato plants, I thought about justice. Karen got 5 years prison, but real punishment was losing everything she valued: status, wealth, reputation, freedom. I got justice, but more importantly, I got community. Martha's memory became a neighborhood treasure. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building something beautiful where ugliness once stood. After the trial, the real victory moment came. A spontaneous celebration began in the neighborhood. Mr. Thompson organized it. Community Garden Victory Celebration. We gathered in Martha's garden. More than 50 neighbors came. children running between tomato seedlings, elderly talking with me about gardening. Mr. Kim had prepared an official plaque, Martha Hartwell Memorial Community Garden, where justice grows. As we hung the plaque at the garden entrance, my eyes filled with tears. Martha's voice echoed in my ears. Michael, you grew life. Mrs. Garcia with fresh salad in hand. Michael, Martha's seeds fed everyone. This isn't just vegetables, this is community. Mr. Thompson's 8-year-old grandson came to me. Mr. Michael, I'm going to be a federal agent when I grow up too. I'll catch bad people. The light in the child's eyes reminded me of Martha. Justice was inspiring the next generation too. Where Karen's Mercedes used to park, there was now a picnic table. Friendship had replaced bullying. As the sun set, I caught the scent of Martha's favorite lavender in the wind. At that moment, I understood that the real victory wasn't Karen's punishment, but Martha's memory creating a community. I wonder how Karen spends her days in federal prison clothes. As she lies in her cell, does she ever think about Martha's garden? Does she remember how she spent that $850,000? Or does she still see herself as a victim? Agent Johnson stopped by last month. Michael, Karen's fraud ring completely collapsed. $18.5 million recovered. Dozens of communities started their own garden programs. The most beautiful part of this story isn't Karen's punishment. It's how Martha's memory created a community. This garden is now not just mine, but the heart of the entire neighborhood. Children learn about life here. Elderly share knowledge. Families connect with each other. Mr. Thompson came yesterday holding fresh tomatoes. Michael, Martha would be proud, he said. You didn't just defeat Karen, you healed the community. Sometimes at night I talk to Martha's photo. Do you see, Martha? Your garden became a victory garden, not just ours, but everyone's victory garden. When the wind rustles the leaves, it feels like Martha is answering. Michael, you grew life, you grew beauty, you grew community. Karen will stay in federal prison for 3 more years. I'll spend many more springs in Martha's garden. Justice sometimes comes late, but when it does, it has perfect timing. Have you ever faced HOA bullying? Share your craziest HOA story in the comments. I love reading them. If this justice story gave you hope, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Don't forget to follow the channel for these kinds of HOA revenge stories. Remember, bullying only wins when good people stay silent. Stand up, fight back, and sometimes just make your point by growing a beautiful garden. Martha's soul is at peace. Her garden will live forever.